In this work, we explore the use of logic-based modeling, reasoning, and satisfiability techniques to prove confluence of conditional term rewriting systems. This is a joint work with Raúl Gutiérrez and Miguel Vítores. In functional languages, for instance, in Haskell, Mod, etc., using conditional equations and rules is frequent. An example is shown in this Haskell code, which provides an implementation of a well-known quicksort algorithm. There are Boolean conditions like x lesser than or equal to y in the second equation for split. There also are auxiliary computations like the pattern matching operations in the where clauses in the conditional equations for quicksort and split functions. They can be homogeneously be treated as conditional equations, conditions in the rules of conditional rewrite systems. Conditional term rewriting systems consist of possibly conditional rules. As shown in the slide, they have the usual left and right hand side of rewrite rules. However, an additional component C is added now. This component is a sequence of conditions which are used as a test for the application of the rule in any rewriting step. In this paper, we are interested in confluence of conditional rewriting. Confluence is an abstract property of reduction relations, guaranteeing that whenever a term S can be rewritten in two different ways, the obtained terms T and T' can be joined again into a common reduct U. Depending on the number of steps we allow on terms S, the diagrams express local confluence if a single step is performed, or confluence if an arbitrary number of steps is allowed. Confluence and local confluence are related, being the last property useful to prove the first one. Confluence is important as an essential ingredient to guarantee, for instance, that normalization semantics can be given to a conditional rewrite system. Normal forms are terms which cannot be further reduced. When dealing with confluence systems, we know that terms may have at most one normal form, not many. If the system is also terminating, then every term has a normal form. In this way, every initial expression is guaranteed to have a normal form, which is often the answer expected by the user. The main purpose of this paper is to investigate techniques to automatically prove and disprove confluence of conditional systems. Conditional rewriting is conveniently defined as provability in an inference system, which is systematically obtained from the rules of the conditional system. The inference system defines a one-step and many-step reduction relations. There are several interpretations of the conditions. Depending on the considered one, different reduction relations can be obtained for the same conditional system. The inference system displayed on the slide treats the conditions of the rules as reachability problems. This can be seen in the upper part of the inference rule RL alpha, where alpha is the label of a rule of the system. Conditional systems whose rules are treated in this way are called oriented systems. Another popular interpretation of the conditions is that of join systems, where conditions are treated as joinability statements. For that purpose, we only need to use a different version of RL alpha as shown in the slide. Our results and techniques are essentially independent from the particular interpretation of the conditions. Given an inference system describing computations with a conditional system, we can define the one-step and many-step reduction relations on terms by probability in the inference system. Then we can define termination of the one-step reduction relation as usual, that is, as the absence of infinite reduction sequences. We can also define the stronger notion of operational termination, which requires the absence of infinite proof trees. Operational termination implies termination, but not vice versa. The following example illustrates this fact. The system is clearly terminating, as the so-called underlying term rewriting system associated to this conditional system has only two unconditional rules, which are obtained by just dropping the conditional part of the conditional rules. the right-hand side of these rules cannot initiate any infinite rewrite sequence. On the other hand, the conditional system is not operationally terminating. When trying to reduce a term f of xx, we need to evaluate a condition starting from f of xx. In order to evaluate such a condition, we can eventually use the same conditional rule again, leading to a never-ending proof process. As discussed below, both termination and operational termination are useful to prove confluence of conditional systems. The inference system associated to a conditional system can also be seen as a first-order theory by just interpreting each inference rule as a universally quantified implication, as shown in the slide. In this way, we obtain a first-order theory which can be used when reasoning about computational properties of the conditional system. Actually, the one-step and many-step reduction relations for the conditional system can be equivalently defined by using reducibility as shown in the slide. We can see an example of such a first-order theory for a particular conditional system. The first sentence asserts reflexivity of the many-step reduction relation. The second sentence shows that the one-step reduction is compatible with many-step reduction, so that one-step rewriting is included in many-step rewriting as expected. The third and fourth sentences express that one-step reduction can be propagated below symbol f, both in the first and second argument. Finally, the last three sentences encode the one-step deductions directly determined by the conditional rules. Unfortunately, trying to prove program properties as logical sentence consequences of appropriate first-order theories is often hopeless. We have investigated this problem elsewhere. We can gain precision in the analysis of properties of conditional systems by using satisfiability instead. The price to pay is working with an appropriate model of the conditional system, fully capturing this computational power. We show such a model in the slide. The domain of the interpretation is the usual set of terms with variables, but where terms have been grounded by replacing each variable by a new constant symbol. Function symbols are interpreted as mappings, taking grounded terms and returning a new grounded term where the function symbol has been placed in the root. One-step and many-step reduction predicates are interpreted as to mimic the corresponding reduction steps on the original terms, and then grounding operator, here represented by the down arrow, is applied to replace variables by the corresponding new constant symbols. We can use now the expected first-order sentences expressing local confluence and confluence. One of the main results of the paper is that confluence of conditional systems can be characterized as satisfiability of these formulas in the new ground model introduced above. The key point is that rewriting computations never instantiate variables of terms which are under reduction. In the literature on conditional rewriting, the analysis of confluence is mostly based on the analysis of the so-called conditional critical pairs. They capture rule overlaps. Two rules overlap if one of them can be applied to some subterm at some non-variable position of the left-hand side of the other, possibly after some instantiation of the variables in them. Conditional critical pairs represent possible divergences of rewriting computations, often called peaks. Such divergences may occur depending on the satisfaction of the conditional part of the pair. Conditional critical pairs are joinable if, for all substitutions satisfying the conditional part of the critical pair, the corresponding instance of the terms in the peak are joinable, that is, they can be rewritten to the same term. Another main result of the paper is that confluence of conditional critical pairs can be characterized as satisfiability of logical sentence in our new model. In the following slides, we summarize the results showing how joinability of conditional critical pairs can be used to prove or disprove confluence of conditional systems. The first result establishes that systems with non-joinable critical pairs are not confluent. However, the absence of non-joinable critical pairs, or even the absence of any critical pair, doesn't imply confluence in general. We need to require additional conditions. The next criterion shows that terminating joint CTRSs whose conditional critical pairs are joinable overlays are confluent. Overlays are critical pairs whose conditional critical position is the root position of the first considered rule. As a simple consequence of this result, terminating normal CTRSs are confluent if and only if all conditional critical pairs are joinable overlays. Normal conditional systems are those whose conditions consist of two terms, S and T, where T is ground and irreducible. For instance, the first system is normal because the right-hand side of the condition in the conditional rule is an irreducible constant P. The second system is not normal because we can reduce the right-hand side of the condition in the conditional rule using the last rule of the system. The next result shows that operationally terminating strongly deterministic systems are confluent if and only if all conditional critical pairs are joinable. Conditional system is strongly deterministic if the following conditions hold. First, rules are deterministic. This means that variables in the leftmost term of all conditions always occur either in the left-hand side of the rule or in the rightmost term of a previous condition. Second, the rightmost part of the conditions is irreducible whenever they are instantiated by an irreducible substitution. The displayed conditional system is strongly deterministic because variable x in the first condition occurs in the left-hand side of the rule, and variable z in the second condition occurs in the rightmost term of the previous condition. Variables are clearly irreducible under application of irreducible substitutions. An interesting approach to prove joinability of conditional critical pairs is treating the problem as a feasibility test. Feasibility conditions are atoms built from predicates which are defined by means of first-order theories. Feasibility sequences are sequences of feasibility conditions whose variables are implicitly existentially quantified. A sequence is feasible if there is a substitution such that, when applied to all conditions in the sequence, makes them provable with respect to the corresponding theories defining the predicates in the conditions. For instance, we can characterize joinability of terms S and T as the feasibility of the sequence displayed in the slide. Notice the use of grounding operator to instantiate variables of terms S and T. This is essential to prevent the instantiation of such variables when solving the feasibility problem, thus leading to potentially wrong conclusions. In the following slides, we show how to use feasibility sequences to prove or disprove joinability of conditional critical pairs. Our first result shows that provability can be used to show joinability of conditional critical pairs. We can use this result to prove confluence of this displayed example. The proof of the logical statement with respect to the first-order theory of the conditional system can be obtained by reasoning about them. Operational termination of this system can be proved by using our tool muterm. Then, by one of the previously listed results, we conclude confluence of this conditional term rewriting system. Now we show that conditional critical pairs are joinable if the peak component of the pair is joinable. In the example of the slide, there is a single conditional critical pair only. Moreover, it is an overlay. The peak of this pair is joinable as proved by the corresponding sequence, which can be proved feasible by InfChecker. By using a previously mentioned confluence result, we conclude confluence of this system when viewed as a joint conditional system. Our next result concerns proofs of non-joinability of conditional critical pairs. If the grounded version of the condition is feasible and the grounded version of the peak is not joinable, then the pair is not joinable. An example of the application of this result is shown in the slide. The displayed system has a single conditional critical pair. The grounded version of the conditional pair is feasible. Notice that this holds disregarding the kind of join or reachability test we use here. However, the grounded version of the peak is not joinable. Therefore, the system is not confluent, either as a join or as an oriented system. In our final result, we assume that the peak of the conditional part of the critical pair share no variable. Then the pair is joinable if and only if the condition is infeasible or the grounded peak is joinable. As an example of use, consider this system. As an oriented system, the conditional part of the pair is infeasible. Then the pair is joinable. As a joint system, the conditional part of the pair is feasible, but the peak is not joinable. Therefore, the system is not confluent. We have implemented our results as part of a new tool, Confident. The tool is written in Haskell and can be used by means of an interactive web interface. Conditional systems can be introduced by using the format developed for the international Confluence competition. The notation is quite intuitive. For instance, our previous example can be introduced as shown in the slide. The condition type section establishes the interpretation of the conditional part of the rules. Then the list of variables is introduced, followed by a section rules, which collects the conditional rule as displayed. Our tool obtains an automatic proof for this example. We've participated in the last Confluence competition this year. With a timeout of 60 seconds, 3 possible answers for the tools are possible. Yes, if the conditional system is confluent. No, if it is not. Or maybe, if no conclusion can be obtained. On the right-hand side, a full run of the full COPS database is displayed. Our results have been good, as shown in the slide. Concluding this presentation, we can summarize our contributions as follows. We have presented a framework for the analysis of confluence of conditional term rewriting systems. We uniformly deal with different kinds of conditional systems. Computations are modeled as probability in an appropriate inference system, also as deduction in a first-order theory. We have introduced a new ground model where reduction of terms with variables is modeled as satisfiability. Confluence of conditional system has been characterized as the satisfiability of appropriate first-order sentences in such a model. Joinability of conditional critical pairs is similarly characterized. We have shown how to analyze joinability of conditional critical pairs by using feasibility sequences. When such results are used in combination with existing results to prove confluence of conditional systems by analyzing joinability of conditional critical pairs, we obtain an appropriate approach to prove and disprove confluence of conditional systems. We have implemented our techniques as part of a new tool, Confident, which uses other systems like InfChecker, MuTerm, or Prover9 as auxiliary tools to check the conditions for the application of our results. This approach has been proved useful by means of experiments, in particular during the last Confluence competition. As a subject for future work, we plan to apply our ideas to the analysis of confluence of rewriting-based programming languages like Mod. Thanks for your interest in this work.